So we're going to look at Sarah's life, and we're also going to look at a question that I think we can answer from it. It's what does it mean to live a good life? Now, why does this question come up? So does anyone want to read the bold sentence right up here?
I will.
Okay, please.
And the life of Sarah was 127 years, the years of the life of Sarah.
So we have
Oh, I forgot the third and, sorry.
yeah, there's significance in this one.
I figured it was.
So there's a principle in the Torah that the Torah uses as minimal words as possible. So if you look at the wording of it, does anything jump out of you at you?
And 3 times.
It says and 3 times, and anything else?
The life twice.
Yes, it's a little bit redundant, right? Because if it says and the life of Sarah was 127 years, why does it need to repeat it, the years of the life of Sarah? It's kind of redundant. So what's the redundancy coming to teach us? So Rashi, who's one of the foremost commentators on the Chumash, says that the reason why it is to show us that all of Sarah's life were equally good. All the years of Sarah's life were equally good. Sounds good?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be nice.
It would be nice.
Yeah, even though she struggled in so many different ways.
So,
Well,
yes.
I just wanted to go back to the structure of the sentence, like it feels like it's starting mid-sentence, like we don't start sentences with like and.
Oh,
It
that's
sounds like there's
true.
a whole other thing that happened before that too.
Good point.
Hmm.
Yes, I mean, this is talking about like after Sarah passes away. So it's talking about her life, and then it tells about the years. So that it's a good point that you picked on that up on that as well. I really want to delve into this idea that all the years of her life were equally good. What do we know about Sarah's life?
It was hard.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about what made it hard.
Well, I mean, she didn't have her child until she was 90.
Yeah, she was, and she desperately wanted a child,
Right.
right? Anything else?
And when Abraham pretended to not be her husband, and then she was like, what, kidnapped or taken away, and
She was kidnapped twice. She was
Yeah.
kidnapped by Pharaoh, by Paro, and she was also kidnapped by Abimelech.
yeah,
All right, so what does he mean, Rashi, that all the years of her life were equally good? Like, are you trying to tell me that the year that she finally has a child was as good as the year that she was kidnapped, or as good as the years that she was waiting to have a child? Like, what does it mean that they were all
But
equally
maybe it
good?
meant that she handled her life well every day of her life.
Okay,
So that's kind of like my take, like the sense that, no matter what her trials were in life, every day was still like the best. As bad as life can be. It's like
How
I
she
wake up
dealt
every
with it.
day, and as challenging as things can happen, I'm so grateful every day for
Mm.
being alive.
okay.
But every day also helps us get to where we're supposed to be going. When we
That's
practice
true.
purpose, right?
Mhm.
Even though it's not always apparent to us.
What do you mean by that?
Like, you think you can have a bad day and it's just not as equal as the day that you have your baby, because that's like amazing, but. There it is, like it could be, if you look at it, like if you didn't have that day, you probably wouldn't have gotten to the day where you had your baby,
Mhm.
right?
Or
So,
even if it's appreciated as much.
right,
Like she maybe she just walked the path of goodness her whole life.
Mhm.
So what does it mean to have a good life?
have a life that's meaningful.
Yeah.
Okay, meaningful.
Is that under interpretation?
Well, it's a question I'm throwing
To
out to you.
fulfill your
No, no, I'm
purpose.
saying, like, everybody might think it's different.
right, like she's asking, what is your interpretation?
Oh, personally?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I thought
But
you,
it's good, like, to have a purpose or to do things for others, but it's also really great to be able to go to Hawaii.
hello.
um, So
There's
what?
no other classes here.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
It's okay.
There's one to add.
At year, there's classes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So you were saying something that it's good to have a meaningful life, but it's also good to.
Be able to go to Hawaii, like, even if it's materialistic or, you know, it's still
Well-
amazing, it's not any different than,
No, it wasn't materialistic.
we're not materialistic.
So why would that be?
Oh,
I'm not saying it is meaningful, it is, even though it's like. you got
right, I wasn't fulfilling a higher purpose.
Right, but it's just as cool.
Yeah.
Right.
But in a sense you were,
I was. Oh,
you
I
needed that,
did.
so that was the higher purpose for you, even though it might not be for somebody else.
Um, So I'm gonna make the question a little bit stronger, and then we're gonna try and. No, you guys did get it, but I want to make it even stronger. So there's a story that's told of a rabbi who lived through the Holocaust. His name was the Chazon Ish. And he was talking to someone once, and he was telling him that for someone who knows the truth, there's no such thing as sadness.
A sadness,
Thoughts?
because we're gonna go to the, what do you call it, the afterlife where,
One minute, you're answering questions. First, let's gather the questions and then we can answer them.
Okay.
Because you're, do you have any questions? Do you have any reaction to what he says?
Yeah,
So he says, the Chazon Ish, and I can't say this, he went through the Holocaust, right? And he says, for someone who knows the truth, there's no such thing as sadness in this world.
so what are you asking us? Our reactions?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your reaction to it?
I get it at a philosophical level, but I just don't know that there is such a person in this world that could know, like, it's unachievable.
Especially having been through
I
that.
mean, I just, the way I'm interpreting what he said is that, well, that it begs the question, what do you mean knows the truth? Knows what truth?
Yeah,
Okay.
So you have to
good.
say, well, which truth are you talking about that
Right,
makes
that's what's.
no
amazing.
sadness, and that would be Hashem's ultimate truth, the purpose for each one of us to be existing in this world. And the purpose that we are here to serve, and that Hashem only gives us what's good. We just can't see it through our lens from our perspective down here. But if we were to be able to see it from the lens of Hashem, there's nothing to be sad about. I'm giving you all good. You might be struggling going through it at the moment, but it's ultimately good.
But what does that mean? I'm gonna push back on you if you don't mind, because God forbid someone goes through a loss, like they're not supposed to be sad. You know, you have a friend and the friend's going through something challenging. You're supposed to be like, hey, that's so wonderful. Like, you're not supposed to, like, are we supposed to be insensitive to their struggle, their challenge? Like,
yeah, but I think it has to do with like, if it's God's will, then it's good. And that we don't understand the reason why. I mean, that's why you say the Kaddish, isn't it? After a loss, because you still believe in God's greatness and that God has a reason for everything that occurs.
But like, the hard part that's, excuse me, for me, that's hard to digest is just now, what about the hostages? Like,
Right, that's what I'm
You
saying,
know, like,
so
why
it's
did-
impossible to achieve that.
Oh.
It's
well,
like,
but I see it on the other side of it in the sense that we see it as sadness, but yet the people that are going through it, it's survival for them. Like, it might not be defined as sadness.
but let me ask you a question. How does God want us to respond to the news of the hostages?
It is sad, I wanna say that, and it has brought a lot of people closer to.
Oh, right, that's
Yeah.
like part of my point.
Right.
Like, other things come from it too.
Right.
How does he want us to feel?
Like, does he not want us to feel sad?
No, I think,
I think he I mean, I think sadness is something that puts us in a different place, but I think he wants us to see things in a different way, to make things better. That's how I see it. Not that we're not gonna
And
feel sad.
if I can ask the question in a ridiculous way, right? And does God want us to be happy?
No, so says the
No.
song.
Like, I can't even ask the question because it's just such a ridiculous, preposterous way, the question to ask, but like, seriously, is that what the Chazon Ish is saying? That like, there's no such sadness, so you know, you go through, a person goes through the Holocaust and they're like, wow, I'm happy about that, or they hear that someone else went through the Holocaust and they're like, I'm so happy for you, like, it's just, I mean,
You wouldn't say that.
The opposite sadness, meaning what is the
Right.
real opposite of that?
so what is happiness? What is happiness? What do you think happiness is? Do you think it's a mitzvah to be happy?
Yes,
No.
being content with your
Song
lot.
says so.
Which,
Yeah, that's true.
It's like it all, you know, Simchat Torah.
Yeah.
I think it's important to be happy. But I think, how do you define the happiness?
so how do you define happiness?
I would like someone to tell me.
I think it's being content with what you have and not wanting it to be different.
Being content with what you have.
That's being content. Content leads to happiness?
No,
But that's
yes,
also a tall order, depending on, you know, God forbid someone has,
Let's say.
someone's sick or someone is in an abusive relationship, like, are you supposed to be happy with what you have? Like,
No.
Well, you may not be happy in the situation. But you can still be happy that. You have an opportunity to make a difference or to
I mean-
change or whatever that looks like.
I was still happy when I got cancer for a second time because I appreciated my husband and the doctors and the friends that I had, so I just focused on that.
and that's a beautiful and I think quite unusual reaction. I don't know,
So,
maybe not.
You
I
know,
don't
there's
know.
plenty of women out there that,
Are able to be happy, you say?
yeah, yeah.
I don't know, when you say happiness. Well, I mean, you mentioned, what about the hostages, what about the families of the hostages, the parents of the hostages? They will never see their.
Okay, so I'm gonna propose as a definition. Jenny asked for it, so you ready, Jenny? Okay, so real happiness is what we experience when you're doing what you know you should be doing.
How do you know what you should?
Well, that's like your
That was not
purpose.
class.
Yes, you missed it.
I know.
And I didn't record it that one.
No
Yes.
way.
I
Are
did
you
not record that one, because it's more of a
So-
workshop and it didn't, so,
I was talking about this with a friend just
You
even a
know.
couple of days ago. And I-
yes.
How do you then really know? What is your purpose, right? Like, it's all of our missions to find out like what my purpose is, and then that's gonna. Like be fulfilling and provide happiness. And then also, I always think we're like. Our minds and our thoughts like trick ourselves, so we're like always ebbing and flowing away from what we're intended to be doing. And then we come back to it, like maybe there's just something happens that brings us back to this like true moment of center. And then you feel aligned with yourself. That you're fulfilling your purpose, but it's really hard to maintain that.
So let me give you an analogy, right? Imagine there's an alien that lands onto Earth. And he's whatever, first time on Earth, walking around, walks past the gym. Looks through the window and he sees this person in the gym lifting weights, sweat dripping down their face and lifting weights. And he thinks to himself, oh my goodness, there must be an evil torturer on the other side of the window of the door who's forcing this person to lift those weights again and again and again, and that's why he's dripping down. Little does the alien realize that not only is this person there voluntarily, but they're paying for the privilege of it, right? Now,
And they're paying for the coach to torture them.
yeah, and they're paying for the torturer, extra and a high premium, right? Now, the person who's lifting weights, can it be a painful experience for them?
Yeah.
Yes, and probably they want it to be a little bit painful. If they go into the gym and they lift weights and they let's say they have a personal trainer and they lift the weights and they don't break a sweat, they walk out, they're like, I don't know if I'm gonna stick with this trainer.
Mm.
Right, but the trainer pushes them and they sweat and it hurts, and are they happy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and not only are they happy despite the pain, it's almost because of the pain, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the more it hurts, the more happy they are, because you want to have that right threshold of pain, right? You don't want to injure yourself. But they walk out, it doesn't hurt at all. They don't feel that sense of pleasure, right? But they break a sweat and they work hard and they walk out and they feel like, wow, I did something, I accomplished something. And that's an analogy for us, right? We often confuse happiness with that rah having fun feeling. That doesn't last, right? Yes, it feels great and it feels cool, but you come back from Hawaii and if you're not happy with your life, then there's something that does, it's short-lived. Yes, exactly. But and so instead, what is it? Happiness is when our soul knows we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, when we're moving in a direction. Interestingly enough, you can get that sense of pleasure. And if anyone ever accomplished anything in life, right? You worked hard for something, you accomplished something. How does it feel?
Great.
It feels great, right? This is the kind of the pattern that we're talking about. By the way, how long does that last?
That day.
Yeah, not very long. Have you ever wondered why it doesn't last long? That feeling of pleasure.
There's always the next thing that needs to be done.
And it's specifically that way because there's two worlds, right? Judaism teaches us there's two worlds. There's this world and there's the world to come. And the two worlds are hardwired differently. This is the world where we need to achieve, we need to become who and the next world is the world of being. So when we work hard on something, we achieve it, how much joy do we feel?
A lot.
And what's that in proportion to?
How hard we work.
How hard we worked, exactly, right? If you have I don't know, a small work, you clean the kitchen, you feel accomplished.
Yes.
Very. Now imagine you clean the entire house. How accomplished do you feel? You've
I'd
done
be
it, you've done it.
exhausted.
You're exhausted, and after you're exhausted, you feel much more accomplished, right? The pleasure derives from the pain, right? By pain I mean the amount of effort that we put in, right? When it's and it is a bit of pain, because if it's easy, we don't feel that same amount of pleasure from it.
Mhm.
And we get through what we're supposed to get through because we know that we're working towards something, right? When you're cleaning the kitchen, you know that I'm gonna get to the point. There's someone in the office.
Okay.
Oh,
Somebody else.
Laurie, who's our bookkeeper, is still working.
oh my God.
Oh my gosh,
Can you pass the chocolate?
Do you need the chocolate?
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So we feel, and the pleasure that we get derives from the amount of effort that we put in. And the amount of effort that we put in, we often put in the amount of effort because we know that we're building up to something, right? And that pleasure doesn't last, specifically because what would happen if it lasted? what would happen if
We
you?
wouldn't do the next thing that. we
Yes,
said.
exactly. We would do the one thing and then we'd be like, wow, this is amazing. I've made it, right? I'm retired now, right? And that's not what this world what this world is about, right? So let's sum up where we are so far, right? We're proposing that happiness comes from doing what we're supposed to be doing. So let's try and answer the question of what are we supposed to be doing?
What are we supposed to be doing?
I go back to fulfilling, trying to ascertain what our purpose is, and then once we ascertain it, to try to live that way.
Any other thoughts? Yes, any other thoughts?
It's also very individual, each person will have a different purpose.
See, that's where I understand that, that makes sense, that feels logical, but I struggle with that. And this is like something I struggle with every day, like with this world. That we're all on this earth together. Like, why aren't we taking care of each other? Won't that bring so much happiness, like to care of us and the world?
So why, I mean, why aren't we? Like,
Most people are very self-focused and they don't see beyond themselves.
but do you think we should be?
Self-focused?
No, we should be looking after each other.
Absolutely.
Right.
So like, I'm trying to start this business. And I need it to be able to support my family, but. If it gets to where I would like it to be, it will afford me to be able to help other people. Like I want to be able to take care of my own family because I need it, but then I want to be able to take care of other people. And so like, I've had friends say to me, well, just worry about your own family. And it's just like, yeah, I do, but no, because I feel like we are all here together. We need to take care of each other.
So what does Judaism say about that?
Aren't we supposed to take care of each
Yeah.
other?
Absolutely,
Right.
100%. And there's a hierarchy, right? For example, you're supposed to give between 10 to
Right.
20% of your earnings to charity. And there's a hierarchy. Your family comes first. Your people in your community come first, right? People in Israel also have a higher priority than others. So absolutely, we suppose, like, I think we can spend a lot of time, and I'm gonna say this and then I'll add a disclaimer, like, because I think we can spend a lot of time trying to figure out, like, what's my purpose, what's my purpose, what's my purpose, and I think we can sometimes fall into a trap of overthinking it, because yes, it's important to know yourself well. It's really important to know yourself well, because every single person around this table is different, and every single person in the world, the entire world, is different, and we're made different for a purpose, and we're supposed to know ourselves well. But when it comes to our purpose, really it boils down to something as simple as make the best choice now, right? Just make the best choice that you can. Make a good choice, make a good choice, make a good choice. That's all. You wake up in the morning and you see someone else, smile at them. You're about to eat. If you're holding at it, pick something kosher over something non-kosher. If you're holding at it, make a blessing. If you're holding at lighting Shabbat candles, like it's all about elevating the small choices that we can. So I think we can worry about what's my purpose, and sometimes we can overthink it. It's interesting because I once had someone tell me a story. So my family has moved a lot, as some of you may know, right? We lived in Berlin, Germany, and then we lived in Calgary, and we lived in Vancouver, we lived in Manchester, and then we lived in Denver. And each time, like, because we have a communal role, someone once said to me that I guess it's easier for you because you know what your purpose is. And I had a situation in my life where I was sure we were moving to a community because I knew what my purpose was there. And it ended up being that those years that we lived in that community taught me very different things. So I'm saying, like, sometimes we can think we know what the purpose is. We think you know what my purpose today is to get up and to deliver a meal to someone, right? And then we have someone in our life that comes and interrupts that plan, and suddenly we're forced to learn to be patient, or to tolerate some distress in our life, or whatever it is. And it could be a very different learning curve. And that's part, I think, of life's journey, is being able to have that flexibility and that ability to say, I don't exactly know what my purpose is, but I know that my purpose is to make the next choice a good choice. Does that
Yeah.
resonate? Does that make sense? Okay, good. I'm glad that resonated a little bit. But okay, so where were we up to? So how comes we sometimes don't feel pleasure? If we're saying that happiness, you know, happiness derives from knowing what we're supposed to do. So someone who's going through a challenge, or someone who's just doing the right thing in life, but they don't feel, how comes we don't sometimes feel the pleasure in it? Has anyone experienced something that I'm talking about?
You mean like when you're working towards an accomplishment that you have that accomplishment, that you don't feel the pleasure from it?
Or you haven't yet arrived at the point, and you're just working at it. Like, let's just say someone is working on koshering their house, for example. I'm putting out examples, right? And it's hard, and they keep messing up, right? How comes they don't necessarily feel like, oh wow, this is great, I'm so excited about it?
Cause it's a struggle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, is it in line with what we said earlier? That, you know, that pleasure comes after the fact, after the accomplishment is complete. But in the middle of it, it's the effort.
Yeah.
And effort is effort. Right?
It's
tiring,
effort, it's hard.
ugly, it's hard. You don't feel the pleasure of it when you're in the middle of it, you feel the pleasure as a result of after.
Isn't that like women in childbirth?
Good analogy for it.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to say though, sometimes not, I mean, I sometimes have a lot of pleasure from the effort. It's very rewarding, like, you know,
Right.
you're really doing something difficult and it feels good, right?
Well, that's
Yeah.
like the
But I-
example of the gym and working
Right.
out.
Right, and I was thinking that too, that as I was saying, it's like, well, no, sometimes. The effort itself can
The
be
pain is pleasure.
pleasurable, but I think it's not so much. At least for me, anyway, I'll speak from it, it's not so much that I'm enjoying the effort, it's that I'm enjoying the imagination of what will be the result of the effort. And I know I'm working towards something good.
There's endorphins and you're feeling all like pumped up and.
Well, I felt that way in Pilates today, like it was so hard and I was sweating and then I felt really good afterwards.
So can I throw a twist?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and I'll use myself as an example, although it doesn't really relate. Well, cause a friend asked me, are you not moving forward because you're afraid to succeed?
What did you
Are you
say?
What?
Not moving forward because you're afraid to succeed.
Afraid to ski?
Succeed.
Oh, succeed.
Oh,
Right, so how does that tie into this?
So like not feeling unhappiness, like afraid of it. So.
Okay. I also want to point out that something that I noticed that both Jenny and Julie were talking about, and that is like the knowledge, right? That you know, you said like sometimes I feel great because I know that how much you know that the effort's going to lead somewhere, right? And I think you also kind of said something, and it's very much is like there's a story that's told, you may have heard this before, of a person who was in prison, and his job was to turn a wheel. For years and years, he had to turn this wheel, and he's imagining what's on the other side of the wheel that he's turning. Maybe there's a factory, maybe there's this, and maybe there's thing. And eventually, they show him what's on the other side, and what's on the other side is that nothing, right? And it's so intolerable to him that he dies of despair. True story or not, I don't know. But the point that of the story is that as long as he thought there was purpose to it, he could tolerate the pain. The moment he realized that there's no purpose to it, he couldn't take it anymore. It's the same work. And I think it's the same thing with us, is that we also have to have appreciation for what we're doing, right? We sometimes think, we do things and we don't recognize how much we're doing. And that it can lead to despair. Like sometimes I'll have someone say to me, like, I'm going through a challenge, and like I'm not doing anything with it, right? And it's a very hard feeling for someone to live with. And I'll turn around and say, like, how do you know? Like, how do you measure success? For example, I remember a friend of mine, she had a baby, and her baby was in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, and it was her third kid, and obviously having a baby in the NICU is going to be stressful. And she said it didn't bring out the best in me. And I said, hold on a second, right? You had 2 kids at home, you had a baby in hospital. Like, what is the best in those circumstances even mean? Right? Like, and I think sometimes we have to recognize what we're doing. And that's why there's a lot of emphasis in the Torah of when it talks about joy in the Torah, it usually talks about joy in relation to serving God. For example, there's a mitzvah, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, that we're supposed to serve God with joy. Or when the Torah talks about the good things that will happen and the bad things that will happen, it says all these bad things will happen because you didn't serve God with joy. Not because you didn't do what you're supposed to do, but because you didn't do what you were supposed to, you didn't serve God with joy. Now, why? Like, what does
It could look like.
what? It's a good question. Let's get to it. But why? What does it mean? That it means that we have to have an appreciation for the beauty of what we're doing. We have to have an appreciation for what we're building, right? Because what we're building is our soul for eternity. And when a person has that appreciation of how valuable that is what leads to that joy. And I think, what does that joy look like? I'll throw the question open to the group. What does that joy look like? That joy, when you have an appreciation that what I'm doing is meaningful and, purposeful. What does that joy look like in our life?
First thing that comes to my mind, sorry, I'm talking a lot tonight, but it's being a parent and seeing the growth of my child, learning and knowing how to do things.
Okay.
I think to me, it goes back to the same definition of what you said for happiness. Like joy is some sort of fulfillment of your purpose. If you can tap into that, but for me personally, it's interesting because I often sit there and I'm like, I don't think I can feel the emotion joy. Like I don't necessarily feel it, but maybe I'm not even defining it correctly. So I mean, that hit me hard when you were like, you brought that up.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Julie?
So I just joined on that so many times I'll do what I think is the right choice in the moment, according to halacha or whatever, or the holidays or whatever it may be, but I'm not necessarily enjoying or enjoy at doing those things.
So
But what is that?
so what is this
Yeah,
feeling
what's-
that we're looking for?
Right. But what does joy feel like for you? Or what is it for you?
I mean, that's a deep question, actually. It feels like it should be rather simple, like, but it's a very deep question, right? to me, I think joy feels light and I'm trying to come up with synonyms, but you know, it's just the feeling of being present and content isn't the right word, but it's just knowing that it's the right place at the right time.
It's alignment.
It's alignment.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
good word for it.
Why is contentment not a good word?
I guess to my brain, contentment has a connotation of more passivity.
Okay.
Whereas joy or happiness or alignment is more. Has more energy to it.
I also use the word incongruent, like if I'm incongruent or I'm not aligned, then something's off in my
Mhm.
universe, right? But then it also goes back to like, you're incongruent or congruent with yourself and your relationship with Hashem. And I think that's the piece that's the disconnect for me personally. And because there is self-sabotage and fear of really believing in that alignment between self
And sometimes there's also fear of the unknown, right?
Mhm.
Because if I'm in alignment with God, like, what does that mean? Like, what am I gonna have to give up in my life,
Mhm.
right? So there's also a lot of times a fear of the unknown.
But I think you said about contentment, like, for me, contentment is like, yes, I have challenges and I appreciate all the good. That's,
And I wanna share, I think, a story that I think maybe clarifies this point a little bit. There's, have you heard of the word bitachon, emunah, faith, trust?
What?
Bitachon? So it means kind of like faith, trust. So there was a Rav Pesach Cohen is a speaker and he lectures around the world. He's quite a well-known speaker. And he tells a story of when he was about 19 years old and his father was very, very sick with cancer. And his Rebbe at the yeshiva that he was in sees him one day and he says to him, "How's your father?" And Rav Pesach Cohen says, "I have bitachon, I have trust that he's going to be okay. Trust in God that he's going to be okay." Now his rabbi was very smart and he knew the situation and he knew that his father was very, very sick and he wanted to prepare the boy. So he turned around to him and he says, "That's not what trust in God means, right? Trust in God doesn't mean that that it's going to be okay, that he's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. What it means is that no matter what happens, it'll be meaningful. It can be meaningful, right? You can find meaning in it." Unfortunately, his father passed away. But the point of the story is that, does the Torah want us to be insensitive to other people's sadnesses? No, absolutely not. We're supposed to be sensitive of other people's sufferings. We hear about the hostages. I believe that God wants us to be heartbroken over it, right? That's what I believe. And happiness can coexist at the same time. Because, and this I think is what the Chazon Ish is saying, is that there's no such thing as sadness, is that you can be in tremendous pain. And you can still know that there's a purpose that I'm working through for this, right? I am being a better person because of the heartbreak that I'm experiencing through whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be big things. It doesn't have to be big things. It can be small things, right? I do one small thing today better because I know about this heartbreak. Hashem wants us to be sensitive to other people's pain. Hashem wants us to be sensitive to our own pain as well, right? We're not supposed to just ignore it. God gave us emotions, and our emotions are there to teach us things, to bring us closer to our purpose, to bring us closer to God. And we can still, happiness can still exist, right? We can be, it's not that, one of my rabbis, Rav Lofter, talks about it, and he says, Menuchas HaNefesh, which is peace, right? Inner peace. Everyone wants like contentment, serenity, peace. Says, what is it? It's not knowing that everything is going to be okay. It's knowing that no matter what will be, you can find meaning from it. Do I know what this thing that I'm praying for right now, right? Do I know what the result is? I'll use this simple example of the heat in my house. Do I know how much it's going to cost us to end up fixing it? I have no idea. We may need a new boiler, a new furnace. It may be a terrible financial burden. And yet, whatever happens, I can be okay through it. I can find meaning in it. I don't know what the meaning is going to be, but I can maybe the only thing I have to do is accept it, right? Instead of, fighting and complaining or whatever, but just to accept that at what it is. And that's I think what Chazon Ish is saying is that not that we're not going to feel sad and not we're going to do, but that heart, that despair, that we can be happy because our soul can be happy because it knows that no matter what's happening in this world, it's creating something meaningful from. And I'll share with you another story as well. This is a story of a boy called Chesky, and he was a young child, and he was diagnosed with leukemia. And his father was obviously heartbroken about it. And one day he's in shul and he's praying, and someone comes over to him and asks him, "And how's he doing?" And he says, "Things are tough, etc." And he says to him, "Look," he says, "Eile barecha ve'eile basusim va'anachnu v'shem Hashem naski." What does it mean? It means that they come, it's a phrase from Tehillim, from Psalms, which says that they fight with horses and chariots, but we fight with God's name. And what it's saying is that a Jew lives by a different statistic, right? We're not bound by statistics, because we can pray, we can, things can, we can move worlds with our prayers. And the father took a lot of hope from what he said. And he prayed and etc. And unfortunately, his son passed away, and he's sitting shiva for his son who has passed away. And he's thinking back to what this person said to him, and he's like, I don't understand, like he gave me hope, and now, like, now what? And then he understood it, and he understood it a little bit differently. And he says, what happens usually is there's a war, right? And if someone
A
loses,
war, you said?
if there's a war,
Yeah,
right? Because the phrase is talking about there's a war, and the people that aren't Jewish, they fight just, they're just with the horses and chariots, but we as Jews have God's on our side as well. And he says what we understand as Jews is that at the end of the war, sometimes we'll win, sometimes we'll lose. And we don't have to go back and second guess ourselves. If you can learn something from it, great. But you don't have to go back and second guess yourself. Like, did we do the right thing? Did we not do the right thing? Because at the end of the day, we understand that, like, what was supposed to happen was supposed to happen. Like, he took it back to his own thing. He says, I don't have to, he went through this terrible tragedy, but he doesn't have to look back and say, oh, maybe I should have gone to a different doctor, or maybe I should have gone to this, or maybe I should have and second guess all the decisions he's making, because he understands that I did my best. I did my best with the information I had at the time. And at the end of the day, there's a God that runs our life. And I think this is perhaps what, when we talk about Sarah's life being all equally good, this is the belief she had that helped her make those years equally good. She accepted that everything that happened to her was meant to be as part of her journey. And with that, she was able to fulfill her purpose, because her purpose was to bring kindness into the world. And she was able to do that no matter what happened, no matter whether she was waiting to have a child, no matter whether she had a child, no matter whether she was kidnapped, no matter what happened, she believed and accepted, this is from God for my purpose. And I can use that to create something good and meaningful from it. And that's what made her life all equally good. And I think that's what you said at the beginning of the class, Jen.
Oh.
So I think that's it. Yeah.
Teacher's pet.
It's a sweater that I made, right? Yeah, sure.
The piece you just said, trusting that it was meant to be. It's. There's that. Vacillation between. Whatever happened or whatever happens is just meant to be. But there's the other thought of, well, I can't just sit around and wait. Right, and say, well, because I didn't act, it was meant to be that I didn't act.
You're 100%
Or
right.
like, how do
Still have to do
you,
the
how,
work.
you can justify it retroactively, but.
So
it-
there's two different, you're asking a very good question, right? And there's a few different things. There's number one, there's two different approaches, right? There's the approach for right now, right? And right now I have to make a decision. I have to act as though this is 100% my decision, right? And what I do is going to make a difference. That's how I have to act. God forbid someone has strep, you can't just say, oh, if I'm supposed to get better, I'll get better. No, go to a doctor and you get yourself checked out or whatever it is, right? You need to pay your mortgage, you got to go to work. You can't just say, oh, if I'm supposed to pay the mortgage, I'll get the thing. You've got to do your what we call in Hebrew hishtadlus, which is you've got to put in the effort. Then there's after the fact, right? I did what I could. And you look back at it. Did I do the best that I could with the information that I had? If the answer is no, then what can I learn from that? Right? I knew that I really should have gone to the doctor, but I couldn't be bothered. And therefore now it's gotten worse, right? So then you have to learn the next time go to the doctor, right? But if I did what I could, I went to the doctor and the doctor missed it, that's where it comes in. And that's where that acceptance is. Like, I can't beat myself up. Oh, I should have gone this, I'll give you.
But could you also say. I put it off, I didn't go to the doctor, and so it got worse. But can't you also say then, from after the fact, well, I guess it was meant to be, that it got worse.
Yes, and you're responsible for that.
Oh,
You're responsible for it, right? It was
To
meant
give
to
you an
be.
example, we've had this conversation several times, like.
excuse me.
Oh, I should probably go to the shul on Shabbos, but I'm just feeling kind of tired and I want to sleep in. So, was it meant to be that I should stay home that day? Or is it meant to be that I should go to shul, whichever one I choose, that's the one that was meant to be?
I don't
Or,
think you
like-
can say it was meant to be if you choose. Like, if someone, to use an extreme example, right? Someone stands in the middle of a busy road and gets hit by a car.
I'm not talking about the extremes like that, I'm talking about,
But, I mean,
Please go.
I mean, how I see that scenario. Okay, maybe it was meant to be, but it's. What came of that from the choice we made,
Right.
that's what it is.
Yeah, I feel like too, it's a choice you're making in the moment. Is it the best choice that you could make for you to reach the alignment that you need to in your lifetime?
Mhm.
And if the answer is like, no, you're like, okay, then I'm just gonna push it off another day. Like, there's still a consequence to that
Mhm.
action.
Mhm.
Right,
Which is maybe
But
that
that's
was supposed to be
precisely, that's precisely why I struggle with the concept of, no matter what happened, it was meant to be.
But it could be, it was meant to be because of your. Let's take it away from you for a second, right? Let's say someone is supposed to win a lottery ticket. I'm gonna use an extreme example, right? And all they had to do was go and make a little bit of effort and go and buy a lottery ticket, and that's all they would have to do to deserve to buy the lottery ticket. And they chose not to. It could be because of their poor choice. They now no longer deserve it. Right, so. I'm using an extreme example because, like,
Deserve the word. It just wasn't meant for them to have that jackpot.
no, maybe it
So
was
there's a
meant to
different
them, but
journey.
they lost it. Maybe it was meant for them, but they lost it.
Oh, see, I see it differently, I see that their journey really is something else that they didn't know.
But there is a concept though that we can lose things that that we are meant. For
That
example,
was hard for me to digest.
okay, so you ready for something hard?
Yeah.
There's a law there's a law, right? That on Tisha B'Av, it's the saddest day of the year. It's a fast day. You're not allowed to do most things, except a person's allowed to propose and get engaged on Tisha B'Av.
Oh, really?
What?
Yeah, they're allowed to propose and get engaged on Tisha
Yeah,
B'Av,
yeah,
right? Not allowed to do any things. Why?
Cause it's the power of and.
Because so that they don't lose their Bashert. Bashert is the person that they're destined to be. Because there's a concept that you delay and you could lose something that's supposed. I think we have a lot more autonomy in our lives than sometimes we want to take credit for, right? Because we and it is these are complicated and complex things, and we're never going to know in our life, right? Whether I got something because it was meant to be, or I got something. Sometimes we do, right? Sometimes we do stupid things, and then whatever, we speed and we get a speeding ticket. Like, yeah, that's on me, right? Like I'm saying, sometimes we know that it's we make a bad choice and then we have a bad consequence. You can't speed and then say, oh, I was meant to get a parking ticket, a speeding ticket, right? Like, you have to do your part to not get the parking ticket. We are responsible for our actions, and then there's a part that's not. We can't beat ourselves up, and I think the best way we can drive ourselves crazy with thinking about it, and we're not going to understand because there's a greater plan and God has a greater plan for us. But I think what's helpful is, can I learn from this or not? Can I learn from what happened or not? Can I learn? I got a speeding ticket. Oh, I can learn from that, right? Like, learn not to speed, for example. But you suddenly get, I don't know, something breaks down at home and you have the same bill. Like, okay, those are meant to be. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but you were gonna say.
Yeah, I'm kind of going off, but it has something to do with what we talked about a little bit earlier, like the hierarchy of like helping yourself and then helping the community and how that kind of branches out. And kind of what I think is mind blowing is that, like, we're here with, like, let's just use the table here, we're peers, right? We happen to be alive for the, give or take, the same century, right? Some people are older, some people are younger, but we're sharing this time and space together to accomplish, like, our goals. So I just think that's interesting. I don't know, like, it's beyond interesting. Like, why are we all together here on this earth at the same time to meet our own personal alignment? Like, so then I start to think of like, well, what is the purpose of everybody else then in this room? And then I take it out even further and I get like the validate, like there's waves of impact that one person can have on self. And then if you go out to the next layer, like community, right? And women, and we keep like, the ripple effect is pretty enormous. And it started with like us making like one good choice, one step after another. And then we can see
Well, I
how
mean,
impactful
like
it can be.
I've heard it said that if you smile at somebody and make their day better, then your day was purposeful.
Right. Right.
So adorable.
It's not, that doesn't have to be a huge accomplishment. It could be
Right.
just little
You don't
things.
realize it years, even if it's a billion, it's years.
Yeah,
Well, I just thought of something, I'm using the example, like I'm sure there's the home. It's not like a wood, there's so many factors, how did you break up in the morning, Do I have to stay home and take care of my kid? They're no kids, and I put them to shore. And then if I don't go to shore, what do I want to do? Oh, it's a nice day, I wanna take a walk, I wanna enjoy nature. It's just like, it's not like a simple,
not black and white.
black and white decision. It's going to be right. And it has so many dependencies.
You could have a spiritual experience stronger outside of shul than in shul.
Yeah,
Right, but to take that out of the picture. Because you're right, it absolutely could be that what we would think would be on the surface, the obvious right choice. May not necessarily always be the right choice based on some of the facts and circumstances. So if we take that part away. And it's just me at home. I'm single. I have no obligations, no kids. No factors about weather or, you know, whatever, and it's not even a fact, it's not even a decision between. Going for a walk in nature and connecting through davening. Maybe it's. You know, go to shul or play on my phone or watch TV. Right? Or, I don't know, do whatever else I would do on that day, it's not shul. It's not a matter of achieving a higher spiritual connection with Hashem in one environment versus another environment.
So if later in the day, you're like, I shit. But do you have that dialogue?
Not always.
I would also be curious, like, what's stopping that person from going to shul, and what would they need in order to enable them to go?
I'm using this example, but it's honestly not even my own personal example, because I don't personally struggle with this. But it's just like something that came to mind to use as an example.
I think sometimes we can use it was meant to be as a cop-out,
Yeah,
and that's what I'm cautioning against,
Right,
right?
and that's exactly what I'm getting at, that I can't get to the point of saying, well, it was meant to be that I should stay at home and lose myself in games on my computer.
No,
Like,
it's because,
that,
but
but
then,
sometimes that is what we need therapeutically, I'm not saying that that's always a bad thing. You know, sometimes we do need to like step back and decompress and separate from stressors and all of that, nothing is ever black and white. But I'm just saying that it's hard for me to say it was meant to be.
and yeah, because I think we could fall into the trap of using that as a cop-out, like, oh, it was meant to be, you know. Whatever, I was late for taking my kids to school because it was maybe it was meant to be, maybe you meant it to be, right?
But then you have another scenario where, you know, God forbid, like something horrible happened at Shoal that day. And it's like, oh, thank God I didn't go. It was meant to be that I was spared,
And maybe
That,
it was meant to be,
you
and I
know,
think
but so we can say it. In some circumstances, but not in others. Like,
think-
I really struggle with
I
that.
think that's where having people in our lives that we can talk to about these things, whether it's mentors, or peers, like-minded, growth-oriented peers, because it's very easy to fool ourselves. But someone else who can hold up to you and say, actually, like, did you try your best? Or the other way, because sometimes we can beat ourselves up over something which isn't our fault. So I think that's where it's helpful to have people in our lives that we can discuss these things with. Because you're right, you could use it as a cop-out, and that's not what it should be used at. But on the other hand, sometimes we beat ourselves up for things that aren't our fault, and whatever, you know, you trying to get to shul on time, and then, I don't know, said kid throws a tantrum and you're not, right, or whatever, and you don't get to shul, and you can beat yourself up, and maybe I should handle it different, and whatever. And maybe you did your best, right? So it's having other people, I really think that's a big deal to kind of help balance that out.
I think also I see it as like you do the best you can, but you can't control the outcome. That's all. It's not like we'll do nothing because whatever happens is meant to be. It's just like do the best you can. And then, like in the example of the family members dying, like we're not in control of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go to shul, I know it's not your example, but just following up on that.
Right?
You could go to shul and
Right.
this has happened to me, and there's like kids in front that are noisy. And because of that, you can't focus at all. And so, you know, whatever, but you went, you can't control the outcome.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.